She stopped counting the days the morning she forgot her sister's voice. Clara Wynne moved through her life like mist, formless, translucent, never quite there. In the early hours, when the bookstore was still cold with silence, she would rearrange the same shelf of weathered spines, her fingers brushing titles she no longer read. Her world was the ticking of the ceiling fan, the soft whine of wood expanding with the sun, the distant seagull cries that never got too close. She liked it this way, predictable, quiet, forgiving. The letter arrived folded twice, slipped between the pages of a worn anthology of Sylvia Plath poems. No stamp, no sender, only her name, scribbled in a hand that trembled. She's not the only one you failed. Her breath caught, not in surprise. She had stopped being surprised long ago. But like a body instinctively bracing for a blow it already knows is coming. She pressed the paper to her chest, as if it might disappear, as if it might burn through her if she didn't hold it still. Outside, the tide was low, dragging seaweed and shattered shells back into the earth's mouth. She hadn't stepped on the sand in 7 years. She still remembered the sound Lily made when she laughed, sharp and bright, like wind chimes cut loose in a storm. That laugh haunted Clara more than the scream, more than the silence that came after. Mr. Rafferty entered from the back, whistling a Sinatra tune. No one under 60 would know. He nodded at her, didn't notice the tremor in her hand. People never did. You okay, Wynne? Always. She folded the letter into a perfect square, tucked it into her pocket, and returned to the shelf. Alphabetical order by author, then title always, always, always. But the book in her hand slipped from her fingers. The spine cracked on the wooden floor, louder than it should have, louder than guilt, louder than grief. She didn't pick it up, just stood there, watching the pages flutter like a bird that no longer remembered how to fly. And somewhere behind her ribs, something old stirred, something she'd buried in salt and silence. A knock on the door, 3 slow taps. She turned, and there he was. She stopped counting the days the morning she forgot her sister's voice. Clara Wynne lived behind silence, not the kind that screamed in its absence, but the kind that filled a room like dust, settling in corners, clinging to forgotten things. Each morning began the same. She unlocked the bookstore at exactly 8:57, 3 minutes early, because early meant empty. The bell above the door offered a single, brittle chime. No one answered it. No one ever did. The shop smelled of old pages and lemon oil. That scent had become her skin. She moved like breath through the aisles, touching books with reverence. Dickens, Didion. Names that never judged her, stories that didn't demand she speak. She took her time aligning spines, wiping covers that didn't need cleaning. Order was her comfort. Alphabetical by author always. That morning, something was wrong. She knew it before she found the letter, knew it in the stillness that held its breath too long, in the hum of the lights that flickered just once, as if nervous. The letter was wedged between 2 poetry books, thin, plain, folded twice, no stamp, no return address, her name on the front, written in slanting ink, Clara. She didn't open it right away. Her fingers trembled, and she hated that, hated the weakness, hated that her heart had a memory of its own. She waited until the sun had moved past the front windows, casting long shadows across the counter. Only then did she sit slowly, as though preparing to bear a weight she had once promised herself never to carry again. She's not the only one you failed. 7 words. That was all. The world tilted. She gripped the edge of the counter. Her throat closed around something too large to swallow. The letter trembled in her hands. She pressed it to her chest. It didn't help. She closed her eyes and saw the water again, gray, endless that morning. Lily's laughter wild, unafraid, echoing off the rocks. Clara had shouted something. She couldn't remember what. Just remembered the sharp edge in her voice. The way Lily turned to look at her, the hesitation in her step. Then nothing but the sound of waves colliding. Nothing but the silence that swallowed the world after. Clara forced herself up. She moved with the stiffness of someone carrying ghosts in her bones. She tucked the letter into her coat pocket. She wouldn't read it again. She didn't need to. The bell above the door rang. "Morning, Win," Mr. Rafferty said, stepping in with a gust of sea wind and too many layers. His scarf trailed behind him like a flag from another time. "Storm's coming, you feel it?" She nodded. He didn't ask more, he never did. She watched him disappear into the back office, heard the clatter of his tea mug against porcelain, the quiet thud of the old kettle. Clara turned back to the shelves. But the air had changed. Books no longer looked like friends. They looked like tombstones. She reached for a volume of Plath, then hesitated. Outside, the tide was low, dragging its belly across the sand like something wounded. She hadn't walked that shore in 7 years, not since the funeral, not since she stood on that beach with her shoes full of wet sand and her mother's fingers digging into her arm, not since she said nothing when asked why Lily had run. She knelt beside the fallen book, didn't pick it up, just stared at it, pages splayed open, words exposed like nerves. There was a line about death on the left-hand page. She read it without meaning to. It stayed with her anyway. The bell rang again, 3 slow knocks this time. She stood, turned. And everything she'd locked away behind routine and silence shattered in a single heartbeat. Elliot Granger was standing there. The first thing she noticed was that he hadn't changed. Not in the way people usually mean. Elliot Granger stood just beyond the threshold of the bookstore, framed by the muted gray light of a Portsmouth morning, rain clinging to his coat in quiet apology. His hair was longer now, more salt than pepper near the temples. The camera strap still crossed his chest like a scar. But it was his eyes, those deep-set, storm-colored eyes, that told her he had not escaped whatever ghosts followed him when he left. "Clara," he said. The sound of her name cracked something in her spine. She didn't answer, just stepped back, as if distance might protect her, as if silence could still be enough. "I didn't know if you still worked here." "You did," she replied, voice barely audible. "Or you wouldn't have come." Elliot exhaled, slow and heavy. His gaze swept across the store. Nothing had changed. She still kept the philosophy section near the window, still used the old wooden ladder, even though the top shelf had been empty for years. "I'm back for a little while," he said, finally stepping inside. A project, something about Atlantic towns and memory, seems fitting. She moved behind the counter, needing the barrier. "Photography," he nodded. She didn't ask what he hoped to capture. Some things were better left blurry. Rain began tapping against the window's light, persistent. Clara hated spring rain. It was the kind that crept into your skin and made your bones feel like they didn't belong to you. "Why now?" she asked. "I didn't choose the timing," he said. "Life rarely lets us." They stood like that for a while, two people trapped in the same sentence, unsure who would speak next. Finally, he pulled something from his coat pocket, a photograph. He placed it on the counter, face down. "I found this while packing up in Nice," he said. "Thought it was gone." She didn't touch it. "I can't." "You should," he said. "It's from the week before." Her fingers hovered, then withdrew. She wasn't ready. Maybe she never would be. "I shouldn't have come." "Then why did you?" she asked. He hesitated. "Because I wanted to remember her, the way she laughed, the way you used to be with her." The way I used to be. Clara felt the bookstore around her pulse. The shelves breathed. The floor shifted underfoot. Or maybe it was just her heart, protesting the weight of what was never said. "Do this, Elliot," she whispered. "I'm not here to open old wounds." "Too late." He nodded, looked down, looked older. "I'm staying at the Red Cottage on Mariner's Lane. If you ever want to talk." She said nothing, only watched as he walked out, the bell ringing in a softer tone this time. Maybe it, too, remembered. Clara waited until his footsteps vanished. Then she turned the photograph over Lily, standing on the rocks, arms wide, wind catching her hair like a banner of light. Behind her, the sea stretched into forever, and at the edge of the frame, just barely Clara's own hand reaching out, she pressed her palm to the photo, as if she could close the distance. That night, long after the store had closed, and the world had quieted into its familiar hush, Clara walked down to the shore. The sand was cold beneath her soles. She stood where the water met the land and let the tide speak. For the first time in 7 years, she listened. The nightmares came back before the week was over. At first, it was only fragments, a flicker of blue light, the sterile scent of disinfectant, the distant echo of footsteps on linoleum. Then the screaming muffled, not from her throat, but somewhere behind glass, as if she were watching the worst moment of her life unfold from the wrong side of a hospital window. Clara woke, drenched in sweat. The sheets tangled around her like restraints. For a moment, she lay still, listening, not for footsteps, not for ghosts, just for the sound of her own breath. She got up without turning on the light. The floor was cold under her feet. She padded quietly into the kitchen, filled a glass, and drank water that tasted faintly of metal. Her hands shook. In the bookstore the next morning, she found herself rearranging the same shelf 3 times. Nothing looked right. Nothing felt right. The edges of her world had begun to fray. Ava dropped by around noon. No warning, just the jangle of the door and her voice, warm, concerned, and a little out of breath. "You look like you haven't slept in days." "I haven't." "Do you want to talk about it?" Clara hesitated, then shook her head. "There's nothing new to say." "You went to the beach, didn't you?" Clara didn't answer. Ava sighed, placed 2 paper cups on the counter, coffee for both of them. Just like always, she leaned in close. "He's back, isn't he?" Clara nodded once. "Damn," Ava whispered. "I was hoping it was just a rumor." "It never is." They drank in silence. Later that day, a small, thin package arrived. No name, no return address. The handwriting was the same. Inside was a photo, black and white Lily again. She was smiling, sitting cross-legged on the library floor, surrounded by stacks of books, her hair in braids, a smudge of ink on her cheek. Clara sat with the image for a long time. Her fingers traced the edges, careful not to touch the center. That night, she opened the box beneath her bed. It had remained untouched for 7 years. Inside were fragments of a life too tender to hold. A bracelet made of string, still frayed, a pressed flower from a notebook, Lily's old sketchpad, corners worn soft. The last item was a folded note. She had never read it, couldn't, wouldn't. But tonight, she did. It was written in blue ink, messy, and looped Lily's voice on paper. "I love you, even when you're not nice, even when you're quiet for days. I know you don't mean it." Clara's chest tightened, and something inside her cracked. She closed the box gently. Then she left the apartment. The walk to the beach felt longer this time, not because of distance, but memory. Each step peeled something back. The night air stung her lungs, salt and wind and shadow. She reached the rocks where Lily had once danced. The ocean was breathing, slow, patient. It made no demands. She sat down on the cold stone, pulled the photo from her coat pocket, and let herself remember not just the end, but the middle, the good days, the jokes, the silence that once meant safety. A voice, deep and quiet, cut through the dark. "I didn't know if you'd come back here." She turned. Elliot stood a few feet away, hands in his pockets, eyes soft with apology. "I couldn't sleep," he said. "Me neither." He didn't move closer, neither did she. "We don't have to talk," he offered. "I don't think I can," she whispered. They sat in the silence together. Above them, the stars broke through the clouds, faint but present. The tide came in slowly, wrapping around the stones like fingers, remembering how to hold. The cafe smelled like cinnamon and old wood, a familiar blend that once meant safety. Clara chose the corner seat by the window. Same as always. The table wobbled slightly. It always had. That was part of why she liked it. Nothing perfect could break her anymore. Elliot arrived 5 minutes late. She watched him cross the street, camera slung behind him like a forgotten burden. When he stepped inside, he didn't scan the room. He looked straight at her. She didn't wave. He sat down gently, as if afraid the weight of himself might disrupt the fragile air between them. "Thanks for coming," he said. "I'm not sure why I did." "That's enough," he replied. They didn't touch the menus, didn't order. Time folded itself small in the silence between them. Outside, a gull dipped through the rain. Inside, the world narrowed to breath. And the soft hum of a heater. Elliot leaned forward. His eyes didn't leave hers. "Do you ever think about that day?" Her hands stilled. "I think about every second of it," she said. "Even the ones I made up, especially those." He nodded. "I remember the sound of her laugh," he said quietly, "right before she ran." Clara looked away. "She wanted to touch the water," she said. "She said it looked like glass. I told her to wait. I told her to go," Clara whispered. The weight of it landed between them. Elliot's hand moved, barely, toward the center of the table, then stopped. "I never asked what you said to her," he said. "Because you already knew," Clara replied. A pause. "I was angry that morning," she said. "Not at her, not really, just life, everything. I don't even remember what I said, but I know how I said it." "She didn't hold it against you." Clara's laugh was dry and hollow. "She's dead, Elliot. She didn't get the chance." They sat in the crackle of grief, not the loud kind, the kind that sits in your lungs and makes it hard to breathe. "I've been writing letters," Clara said suddenly. "To her, never mailed, never read aloud, just writing." "What do you say?" "Nothing helpful, mostly apologies, some memories. I tell her about the weather, about books I think she'd like." "That's beautiful." "It's not," Clara said. "It's cowardice. I talk to paper because I can't talk to the truth." The waitress passed by, paused, then moved on without interrupting. Elliot looked at her, not with pity, but with something else, a quiet recognition. "I didn't come back for closure," he said. "I came because I couldn't remember her laugh anymore, and I thought maybe you could." "I remember it," Clara said, "too clearly. It's the only thing that still sounds alive." He reached into his coat, pulled out another photo, not of Lily this time, of Clara. She was sitting on the grass, back turned, Lily curled beside her, resting her head on her shoulder. The picture was soft, unfocused. Sunlight broke across their hair like a blessing. Clara stared. "I don't remember this moment," she whispered. "I do. It was quiet. You were both humming something. I didn't want to interrupt." She closed her eyes. Elliot slid the photo toward her. "I'll leave you with that," he said, standing slowly. "Thank you for still being here." She didn't answer after he left. Clara sat for a long time. She didn't cry. Instead, she pulled a receipt from her bag, turned it over, and began to write. "Dear Lily, today he remembered, so I let myself remember too." The ink trembled, but she kept writing. The box had remained sealed for years, tucked beneath the floorboards in the back of her closet. Clara had buried it on the same day they lowered Lily into the earth. not with ceremony, just with quiet, deliberate hands, and a single strip of duct tape across the lid. She opened it slowly, as if afraid of what her fingers might recognize. Inside, everything was smaller than she remembered. Lily's sketchpad was on top, spiral bound, edges frayed, corners curled like old petals. Clara flipped through it with trembling care, doodles of sea creatures, scribbled notes, a 2-page spread of what looked like a fantasy garden, labeled in Lily's crooked handwriting. The quiet place. Then, near the end, a drawing that stopped Clara cold. 2 figures, one tall, one smaller. The taller one had a dark cloud over her head. The smaller one held a balloon. Above them, a title, "My sister when she's mad, but still loves me." Clara pressed her palm over the page. Her breath shuddered. There was more crayon drawings, an old movie ticket, a locket with nothing inside, and a small notebook Clara had never seen before, bound in blue cloth. No name. She opened it. The handwriting was Lily's, a journal, childlike, scattered, full of secrets only a younger mind would write down with such fearlessness. One entry read, "I don't think Clara hates me. I think she hates the part of herself that's loud." Another, "Today she didn't say anything, but she made me toast and left it on my desk. That means she still loves me." The last entry was dated 3 days before. "She said something sharp this morning. I pretended it didn't hurt, but it did. I wish I knew how to tell her that even when she's sharp, I want to stay close." Clara closed the book. Her fingers wouldn't let go. The ache in her chest was a tide pulling her under. A knock at the door. She didn't move. Another knock, then a voice, quiet, familiar. "It's me." She opened the door. Elliot stood in the hallway, eyes red, hands holding something wrapped in cloth. "I found it," he said. "This was in my things. I didn't know it was there." He unwrapped the cloth, a photo, one neither of them remembered taking. Lily, standing on the dock, arms open wide, wind catching her dress like wings, and Clara in the corner of the frame, half turned, mouth open as if mid-sentence. Clara staggered back. The memory slammed into her like wind against open sails. "I remember this day," Elliot said, his voice barely more than a whisper. "Just told a joke, something silly. You were laughing. Then something shifted. You said something. I don't remember the words, but I remember your face." Clara's hands went cold. "She ran," Elliot said, "not away, toward the edge, toward the water." He looked up. His eyes didn't accuse, they mourned. "I should have stopped her. I should have never said it," Clara breathed. The hallway held them in its narrow stillness. Neither moved. "It wasn't your fault," he said. "It was." Silence. Then, gently, Elliot stepped forward. He didn't touch her, just stood beside her. His presence filled the space like warmth in winter. "I didn't come to forgive or be forgiven," he said. "I just wanted to remember it right, all of it." Clara nodded, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. She walked back to the living room. The sketchpad in her arms, sat on the floor. He sat with her. And together, they turned the pages, not to fix the past, face it, gently, fully, the sea, somewhere beyond the walls, kept breathing. Clara didn't leave the apartment for 3 days. The world outside moved without her. Rain came and went. The mail was left untouched. Even the bookstore remained closed. A small sign flipped backward on the door. Back soon. Ava stopped by on the second day with soup, clean clothes, and too many questions she didn't ask. She sat by Clara's bed, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead like a sister might. Clara barely moved. She watched the ceiling like it held all the answers she'd run out of strength to ask for. On the third night, something changed. It wasn't dramatic. Just a sound, a low, humming echo that seemed to rise not from the world, but from within. Clara sat up slowly. Her body ached in places she didn't know had names. She wrapped herself in the old cardigan Lily used to borrow and stepped into the quiet. The city outside her window was dark still, the kind of still that only exists between midnight and memory. The photo Elliot had given her was on the floor. It must have fallen. She picked it up gently. Lily's eyes stared out, not accusing, not even sad, just open. Curious, brave in the way only children can be. Clara pressed her forehead to the glass. The tide was out. She needed to go. She dressed with trembling fingers, pulled on boots she hadn't worn since fall, stepped into the night without locking the door. The wind met her like an old friend, fierce, familiar, forgiving. The walk to the shore was longer than she remembered, or maybe time just bent differently now. She passed closed diners, quiet houses, the blinking red of an all-night signal light. When she reached the beach, the ocean was waiting, wide, ancient. Unmoved, she stepped onto the sand. And it hit her, not a memory, not a thought, but a wave of something invisible, heat, color, a surge of presence, as if something had broken free inside her, or maybe had been waiting all along. She gasped, not from fear, but recognition. The wind rose. The moon pulled a shimmer across the water. And Clara stood at the edge of it all, her arms slack at her sides, her heart a drumbeat too loud. Behind her, quiet footsteps. She turned. Elliot stood a few paces away, his coat unbuttoned, his eyes glassed with exhaustion. Neither spoke. Then, without thinking, Clara took one step forward, and the air between them changed. No touch, no word, only breath, only silence. And in that silence, something bloomed. A warmth, slow and golden, spread from within her chest outward, not from his presence alone, but from the way he saw her. As if she wasn't a ruin, as if she was still whole, still real. They stood like that for what felt like hours. The space between them heavy with unsaid things. Then Clara whispered, "It still hurts." "I know," Elliot said. "It might always," he nodded. "Not here to take it away." She closed her eyes. "But you stay anyway." "Yes." The ocean moved closer, not with threat, but invitation. Clara breathed in the salt, the cold, the weight. And in that breath, something broke open inside her, not in pain, but in surrender. And for the first time, she didn't fight it. She let the tide rise around her feet. She let herself feel it all. Clara sat cross-legged on the wooden floor, surrounded by torn envelopes and unwritten pages. The apartment smelled like ash and peppermint, the ash from the fireplace. The peppermint from the tea Ava insisted she drink when her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Tonight, the letters weren't for Lily. They were for herself. She unfolded the oldest one. Her handwriting was younger then. Tighter, the ink smudged in places where her fingers had pressed too hard. I miss you, even when I'm pretending not to, even when I'm angry, especially then. She didn't cry, not this time. She read each one aloud, voice steady. Not to the room, not even to Lily, but to the girl she used to be then. One by one, she fed them to the fire. The paper curled slowly, edges darkening like memory fading. Each flame whispered something back, a flicker of heat, a crackle, a sigh. Outside, the wind howled inside. Clara was still. When the last letter burned, she reached for a new sheet. Blank, no date, she began again. Dear me, you're not who you were. You never will be. That is not failure. That is becoming. The words came faster now, freer. You loved her. That love was not perfect. But it was real. It mattered. It still does. She paused, the pen trembling in her hand. She forgave you long before you ever asked. And maybe now, it's time to do the same. A knock at the door, Elliot. He didn't wait for her to answer, just stepped inside, holding something small in his hands, a photo. He offered it to her without a word. She took it gently. It was the three of them, Elliot, Lily, and Clara, taken on a bench outside the bookstore, Lily grinning. Clara mid-laugh, eyes closed, Elliot looking at them, both like he was afraid to blink. I almost threw it away, he said. Why did you? Because it was the only one where none of us were pretending. They sat by the fire for a while. There was nothing but the hush of flames and the ache of memory between them. Then Clara turned to him. Why did you leave? Elliot stared into the fire. Because I thought if I stayed, I'd break you more. You didn't. I was already broken too. She nodded. I know that now. They sat shoulder to shoulder, not touching, but close enough to share the warmth. I don't want to forget her, he said. You won't. I don't want to forget us either. Clara smiled softly. Then don't. They watched the fire dim to embers, and in the fading orange glow, Clara felt something shift, not gone, not healed, but held. The gallery smelled faintly of varnish and winter air. Soft instrumental music floated overhead, barely louder than a heartbeat. Clara stood near the entrance, hands clasped tightly behind her back, eyes drifting across the room. The exhibit was titled Loss in Light. She almost hadn't come. But Elliot had left an invitation at the bookstore, folded beneath a photo of the sea, no note, just a single line handwritten on the back. She would have wanted you to see. So she came. The first room was quiet. Photographs hung at uneven heights, some black and white, others in color so soft they felt like memory. Most were of landscapes, tide pools, empty chairs, fog-hugging rooftops. But the second room, that one was different. The walls were mirrored, floor to ceiling. Light bounced everywhere, bending time. People disappeared into reflections of themselves. It was disorienting, beautiful, terrifying. Clara stepped inside. There were only 3 photographs in this room. The first, a child's rain boots left on a doorstep, one fallen sideways, soaked. The second, 2 shadows touching on sand, no bodies in sight, just the imprint of presence. And the third, she stopped breathing. It was her, a younger Clara, seated on the floor, Lily asleep in her lap. The light in the photo came from a window behind them, casting both faces in a gold that made them look more spirit than flesh. She didn't remember the photo being taken, but she remembered the moment they had been reading. Lily fell asleep mid-sentence, her hand tangled in Clara's sweater. Clara hadn't moved for hours, just sat there, listening to the small breaths. Protecting that stillness like it was sacred. A presence at her side. Elliot, he said nothing, just stood beside her, watching her see herself. I don't remember being that girl, Clara whispered. She's still in you, he said. Clara shook her head. She died with her. No, she just went quiet. Clara swallowed hard. She was so open. She was still learning, Elliot said gently, and she still is. Clara turned to him, voice barely above a breath. She was never really gone, was she? Elliot's eyes softened. Only when we stopped seeing her. She let the words settle then. For the first time in years, Clara smiled, not wide, not bright, but full present. She stepped out of the mirror room and into the hallway, where the light felt steadier. Outside, the sky was turning to dusk. The wind carried salt and something almost sweet. Clara didn't flinch. She walked toward the glass doors, then paused, turned back, and looked once more at the photograph. 2 sisters, wrapped in silence and light, still here, still whole. A year passed like the tide, subtle, steady, changing everything and nothing all at once. Clara lived differently now, not louder, not brighter, just more awake. She still opened the bookstore at 8:57 every morning, still polished the shelves and left the lights low. But now, she left the door unlocked 5 minutes early, just in case. Ava's wedding was in spring. Clara wore blue and cried when Ava walked down the aisle, not because of the music or the vows, but because she hadn't imagined herself standing there, whole, not once. After the reception, Ava pressed her hand. You look lighter, she said. Clara smiled. I'm not. I've just learned how to carry it better. That summer, she finished the first draft of a children's book. It was short, simple, called The Girl and the Quiet Place. The main character had Lily's curiosity, her boldness, her wild, stubborn heart. She sent the manuscript to a small publisher with no expectations. A month later, they called back with yes. Clara celebrated by walking barefoot on the beach at dusk. No coat, no shield. She whispered thank you to the wind, though she didn't know who was listening. Elliot didn't stay in Portsmouth, but he didn't disappear either. They wrote, sent small packages, postcards, photographs, handwritten lines from poems they never finished. He called once from Florence, the signal choppy, his voice clear. "I'm proud of you," he said. She didn't answer right away. But when she did, her voice didn't tremble. "I'm proud of me too." Now, on the quietest evenings, Clara returned to the rocks. She never brought photos, just her thoughts, just the book she was working on, the second one. This one was about tides, about how they always return, even when they seem gone forever. That night, she read aloud a passage she'd written earlier. She learned to love the waves, not because they spared her, but because they taught her how to float. The sea whispered back, not with words, but with presence. Clara closed the notebook and stayed a little longer. The train station was quieter than she remembered. Early autumn sunlight filtered through the high windows, painting soft amber lines across the floor. Clara stood near the platform, a paper cup of tea in her hands, watching the world move around her without urgency. Elliot appeared through the crowd with the same worn satchel slung across his shoulder. His jacket was open, and his hair a little longer than before. He smiled when he saw her, no hesitation. They walked toward each other with the ease of people who no longer needed to fill silence. "You're early," she said. He shrugged. Didn't want to miss anything. She handed him the tea. He took it, then looked down at her fingers, ink-stained again. "Still writing?" "Always," she replied. They moved to the bench by the far window, the one facing the tracks. For a while, they didn't speak, just watched as pigeons shuffled near the edge of the concrete, oblivious to departures. "You staying long?" she asked. "Just passing through." "Always passing through," she said with a soft laugh. He nodded. "But this time, I wanted to stop even for a moment." She looked at him carefully. He looked older, but not tired, not lost. "I read your book," he said, "twice." Her cheeks flushed. "You wrote her beautifully," he added. "You let her live again." "She never really stopped," Clara whispered. "No, but now, she's not just memory, she's voice." They sat in that quiet, where grief used to live, but didn't anymore, not quite. Just then, a small boy walked by with a balloon tied to his wrist. He looked back at them, curious, then grinned wide before disappearing into the crowd. Elliot stood as the train approached, a low rumble in the distance. He slung the satchel higher. "I don't know where I'll be next," he said. "That's okay." "I'll write," he promised. "I'll read," she said. He hesitated, then leaned in, not for a kiss, just so their foreheads touched. It was not romantic. It was not dramatic. It was something more. When he left, she didn't watch the train pull away. She turned toward the door, walked outside, and stood beneath the open sky. The breeze carried the scent of salt and something faintly floral, maybe jasmine, maybe memory. Clara closed her eyes, let it fill her. She stood still, then smiled, not because everything was healed, but because she'd stopped running. And somewhere deep inside, beneath the tide and the silence, something steady had begun again, the sound of her own heart.